let's start off here. Let's start off our journey today, not on Israel, Palestine, but instead in Mexico. Okay. Having said that, from what I understand, she was not great as the as the mayor of Mexico City, but that's neither here nor there. Let's continue.
It has been made in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum has been elected as the country's first ever female president. She told supporters she would not fail the Mexican people and vowed to reduce violence and improve the lives of women in a country where one of the world's highest rates of femicide. Huge celebrations in Mexico City main Zocalo, the square there. Ms. Sheinbaum will replace her mentor, the outgoing president Andrés Manuel López Obrador, on the 1st of October. Will Grant is there for us.
A genuine moment of history in Mexico. In a nation where women only got the vote in the 1950s, Claudia Sheinbaum becomes...
Bro, you need to stop sending me censored mem posts when it comes to, like, just in general, okay? Just in general. You guys need to stop it, okay? I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to hear... I don't want to hear from an account that literally will be like, this is the Jewish president. It's like, come on, bro. We know what you're doing, okay? You don't even know what our fucking policies are. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. I'm genuinely confused. Why do you say AMLO is leftist? He's openly criticized the U.S. and brought the Mexican minimum wage up. The economy is going up and doing lots of senior population. Sure, the cartel and crime has skyrocketed. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I said this before, AMLO is, one, very popular for good reason. It's very popular. His policies are very popular. He's overall... he has some weird takes on a lot of issues, but he is the best Mexico has to offer. Okay. And it seems to me like Claudia Sheinbaum is going to follow through on that tradition. Okay. Like my question to the people who are, beyond critical of AMLO, but saying like, oh, he's bad or he's just awful. Because like there's a couple things that he did throughout his administration that I openly championed and said was good, whether it be the renationalization of petroleum, oil extraction, or whether it be the nationalization of lithium. Those are some pretty good things. Overall, obviously not great on the cartel stuff. And people are very critical about the way that the military has been beefed up. Some people say it's good, and the military does a better job and is like harder to corrupt than the local police are. Others say that the military has been violent, suppressive, brutal, and turning into the Mexican government's own version of the cartel. Having said that, however, it seems to me like it is definitely the lesser evil voting alternative with no real alternative whatsoever beyond that. Like, I don't really know. I don't really know what the other... You're wrong on this like you were with Fetterman. Nah, fam. Am I wrong to assume that censormen pose their pro-Palestinian views from a firmly anti-Semitic point of view, like they don't care for Palestinians at the end of the day, they just don't like Jewish people? I don't know. It could be a little column A, column B, but it doesn't matter to me. As soon as someone is like demonstrating anti-Semitic bullshit, I'm like not going to be on board with that regardless. I'm never going to... It's going to take a lot for me to trust someone after that shit. Okay. So, the other female candidate was wanted to privatize the electric industry. That's how bad she was. Yeah, it's like, what are we doing? You have someone who is like on the aesthetic front, she hits all the markers. She's a woman, okay? She's a climate scientist. Even on the leftist front, there's a lot of things that AMLO has done, and being AMLO's spiritual successor in that regard is good. Okay. Having said that, what's the alternative? Like the fucking small business owner, the entrepreneur, like the right-wing entrepreneur, the opposition with the interest of like beefing up the startup culture in Mexico City or some shit. Like, what are we doing? Like, what the fuck is that about? You know?
Was the first woman to break centuries of male domination over the Mexican presidency, shattering the glass ceiling for generations of women to come.
I do personally like that people ride for a person whose like family is historically communist because she's a woman. Like liberals have to do this thing where they just literally have to be like, well, this is great. It's the glass ceiling being broken. Isn't that wonderful? The glass ceiling is being shattered. Meanwhile, like, again, grandparents, straight up fucking Mexican communists, dad communist, from what I understand. It's like, it's great.
Que por primera vez en 200 años.
For the first time in 200 years, women have reached the presidency, she told her jubilant supporters in the capital's main plaza.
It's historic, completely. It's for the women who are no longer with us and those who are still fighting, not just in the political arena, but in any way where we have conviction as women. To see someone who comes.
Yeah, this shit was crazy, by the way. Mexican candidate assassinations hit grim record ahead of Sunday's election. 37, bro. Mexico's election is now the bloodiest in its modern history after a candidate running for local office in the central Puebla state was murdered on Friday at a political rally, taking the number of assassinated candidates to 37 ahead of Sunday's vote. Like, it's a little different, you know? The situation is a little different, okay? Twitter leftists think they have more credibility than Evo. Yeah, I mean, guys. This is like, you know, Giannis Varoufakis posted celebrating her. I'm not like super fucking clued in on her policies at all. But, you know, there's a lot of people that I do trust that I am aligned with politically that are seemingly very excited about the prospect. So I'll reserve my judgment for what she ends up doing. The real problem is that Morena is getting control of Senate and Congress. They can make changes in the Constitution now. They have whole control of the country. Well, here's the issue there, okay? Which it already did happen, as far as I understand, in Mexican politics regardless. But that could be a good thing, or it could be a very bad thing. It's just entirely related to the ideological commitment. It's entirely related to the ideological commitment that the party has to legitimately improving the material conditions of all people in Mexico. If they have that genuine vested interest, then it's a good thing. If they don't have that, and by the way, this is being done technically through the democratic process, so it's not like I know that there are other aspects of it. For example, the AMLO stuff as it pertains to the Supreme Court, right? I think there was some issue with the courts. Having said that, however, I'm not immediately going to be like, oh no, they are too popular. You know? Here's what Giannis said. You should trust no politician, but at the same time, consider everything AMLO did for the poor in Mexico. Claudia is committed to continuing AMLO's policies in favor of those lacking power and wealth, but that does not mean we should not be ready for fair criticism. Yeah. Like, I am going to reserve my judgment for her policies if she does, I mean, when she does inevitably follow through on them, rather than immediately be like, oh, this is fucking bullshit. Because the reality is that having this popular governing mandate, historically speaking, has actually led to prosperity in the past as well. It has also been incredibly damaging for Latin American countries in the other direction. And what I mean by that is when it's not actually the democratic process that brings someone in the position of power, but a fucking coup d'etat backed by the US state that then go in and create this massive dictatorship. Oftentimes, however, when a incredibly popular, a populist, democratically organized movement that ends up working on solving some of the underlying material inequalities, when they actually have this incredible popular mandate to operate and they demonstrate a commitment to that goal overall, that goal that got them that popularity to fucking begin with, that yields pretty positive outcomes. And it's not just in Latin America either. This has also happened in the United States of America. Who am I referencing here? Obviously, no one in contemporary American history. I'm talking about FDR. So ultimately, we have this capacity to go, oh my God, this is terrifying. I don't really, what's going on? We have like complete control of Congress and the presidency and there's no checks and balances. And it's like, we're kind of, in my opinion, behaving like American liberals who say stuff like, they want to do split ticket voting because they want like a Republican Congress with a Democratic president. I'm not necessarily inclined to immediately say, no, it's good to have opposition in all instances. Yeah, that's why I was saying, like, didn't this happen before? But like, yeah, Morena is the new PRI is what you're saying, right? But I don't know if like having all of these different representations in Mexican politics has yielded positive results for Mexicans in general. I'm just looking at results. I don't personally give a shit about like, I don't personally care about what these guys are aesthetically presenting or what happens in this situation. Does that make sense? Please say PRI, not PRI. Can you sponsor me a visa? Maybe. Yeah, this is a real argument. I used to love the metro system in Mexico City until roofs started falling off, trains derailing and crashing more often. This is something I have heard. Overpasses falling on top of pedestrians. Now, that isn't entirely her fault, obviously. Mexico's crumbling infrastructure is not going to be directly the fault of the fucking last Mexico City mayor. But I have heard from people that she wasn't a very good mayor and more so a careerist. Why are you assuming you know what's going to happen in Mexico, though? Wait, what? Are you talking to me? I'm not assuming that, unless you're talking about the 3-minute ad break that Mexicans are definitely going to see right now. At the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break. And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime, 5 pesos. You know? Yeah. Disgusting, lol. What do you mean? Morena is the new PRI. Shut up! It's 50 pesos for me, lol. Okay, dólares, no pesos. Like, the real thing is, I don't think she's going to do feminism, for example. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people are like, well, that's a woman in charge now. Like, Mexico's about to be feminist. And I don't personally think that that is going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think she's going to advance feminist causes. Maybe she will. I don't know. But like, it's the social issues that I don't think it's the social issues that I don't think are going to change in Mexico. But I'll take what I can get in terms of like any kind of advancement for the poorest Mexicans. Also, here's the 3-minute ad break now. Only for selfish reasons, of course, because like I said, I want every Mexican to be able to subscribe at the top of the hour. So the point is, it's all a matter of what will they do with the popular mandate they have? How did they arrive at this popular mandate? Well, it seems like they arrived at it through good policy, or at least comparatively good policy. I wouldn't say it's the best policy, but overall, making the most of making the most that they could with the obvious limitations that they have. We often forget how long and how arduous a process it is to change, especially a country like Mexico, which is like, it feels like it's a piece of land that is governed by a bunch of decentralized, like, no way you're calling Claudia woke. No, that's a meme, man. Jesus Christ. Kind of unrelated, but I remember last election's Partido Verde literally sponsored a ton of Mexican influencers, and they all posted the same story supporting the party. Yeah. You're not going to be able to unironically, one, remove corruption as an element from Mexican politics, and two, you're certainly not going to be able to do that in one term, and three, you are not going to be able to dismantle the influence of the cartel. So, but yeah, see, this is what I mean. The metro system didn't have maintenance work for 53 years, and somehow it's the current government's fault that the infrastructure is crumbling. They handled poorly, though. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's like a competent governor, a competent leader, a competent mayor would try to work against that, but it's not entirely in her hands. That's my point. And the same went for AMLO as well. So we'll see what happens. People endorsed by AMLO has governed Mexico City for the past 20 years, though. Anyway, let's get back to it. Let's see what the media is saying, and then we'll talk about it.
Fight at the bottom to the presidency, it's so emotional. For me, it's marvelous.
Your chat ate my ass yesterday for saying mate and called me a fake Mexican. I live in Puebla. Puebla! And I'm called Carlos. I've never been to the USA. Puebla! I don't know. I can't stop saying Puebla like fucking, what's his name? When he was talking about the UAW strike, and he's like, calling Claudia woke is wild. Claudia is the handpick of the current president who just want to change the Mexican constitution so he can be president forever. Oh my God, bro. Let's continue.
Of such entrenched machismo, what Claudia Sheinbaum has achieved here is no small feat. Other women have tried and failed, but her offer of continuity with the governing party's social policies, which have pulled millions from poverty, have proved hugely popular with the electorate.
Her critics, in particular,
The right-wing liberals are right-wing liberal freaks are coming out of the woodwork today. I don't know if like there's that many fucking right-wing liberals in Mexico that are like also big fans of mine at the same time, who are just like, all I will point to is this: where is the alternative? Where is the alternative? In fairness, I think some leftists are calling her a Zionist in the same way that they call AOC a Zionist, just complaining that she's not critical enough of Israel and that strategic ambiguity is a form of soft Zionism or whatever. Yeah, except her positions on Israel would merely be a continuation of AMLO's positions on Israel and not necessarily born out of her Jewish heritage or whatever the fuck. That's my point. So if she does continue strategic ambiguity against Israel, then that is directly a consequence of following through on AMLO's strategic ambiguity, in spite of the fact that there is, as far as I understand, a lot of people in the administration currently that is hypercritical of Israel, and including, but not limited to those who have tried to get Mexico to join the ICJ court case as well, alongside South Africa.
In particular, her opponent in this vote, Xochitl Galvez, are left deeply frustrated, especially by the huge margin of victory. They say her mentor, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, is a populist and an authoritarian, and that Ms. Sheinbaum will govern as his puppet, something she denies. This election has been historic for all the wrong reasons too. It's been Mexico's most violent campaign in living memory, with dozens of candidates threatened and murdered. One of them was the candidate for mayor of Coyuca de Benítez, Alfredo Cabrera, shot in the back of the head by a gunman at
What is happening with this video?
his closing rally. His murder was a sign of the huge security task, a fear she isn't up to
What is
the
happening?
huge security task facing Ms. Sheinbaum. A staggering 11 women and girls are killed every day
I know they can't show it. Why are they shaking it though?
in Mexico, and her critics fear she isn't up to the task of tackling the problem.
If Sheinbaum wins, I think the militarization will continue increasing. They will keep on having ever so more power, you know, both the military and the narco, because they have been together for decades.
For now, her supporters are celebrating having made history. And once the party ends, most voters want the president-elect to prioritize drug cartel crime over all other issues in her in-tray. Claudia Sheinbaum inherits a nation mired in violence. Her challenge now will be to succeed where so many men before her have failed. Will Grant, BBC News, Mexico.
Brother, those are the kind of people say we are becoming Cuba because you voted for Morena. Yeah.
City.
One can only hope. One can only wish that Mexico becomes Cuba. Okay? Like, great. That doesn't sound like a bad idea at all. That sounds like an objectively good turn for Mexican politics. Holy fuck, dude. Cuba is doing, you know, all things considered, despite the crippling blockades and endless sanctions that are completely unjustifiable, completely inhumane against the Cuban state by the global dominant hegemonic superpower United States of America for the crime of having a fucking revolution against America's the American-backed dictator. Okay, I would say that Cuba is probably doing pretty fucking good. If Cuba was allowed to thrive on top of everything else, like if they weren't so hyper reliant earlier on the USSR and then beyond USSR now, China, if they could like participate in the global marketplace as one does, they would do even better. Chad, don't you think Hasanabi should go to Cuba? Because I do. I had the opportunity to go, but apparently they can't. I can't really live stream out there, so I am not going to go. I was going to go with like the People's Brigade or something. Like, I forget what it's called, but you can't really live stream out there. So unfortunately, yeah, I'm a censored man. This was the bloodiest in terms of history of modern Mexico. And who are the victims? Poor people in the majority. Wait, what? This was the bloodiest term in the history of modern Mexico? I'm not ignoring this fact. I have, it's one of the major criticisms that I think the AMLO government has. It's just that at a certain point, you have to recognize it is kind of outside of their control and outside of their power. You know what I mean?
Vanessa Rubio Marquez served as Deputy Finance Minister of Mexico, and I asked for her reflections on this historic moment for the country.
Definitely, this is a huge historic milestone in Mexico for women, of course, but not only for my generation, but for the generation of my grandmother, my mother. It's been only 71 years since women were granted the right to vote in Mexico. We have had 20 women holding governorships in Mexico. I myself was the first deputy minister of finance in the country in 2016. So we have been moving forward, but still it's a lot in our way to find parity at the end. But yes, this is a huge milestone.
She's incredibly close to the outgoing president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. How will she be different from him, though?
I think Mexico has a very strong presidency, a very strong presidential regime. So I think she will be her own figure, but it's yet to be seen where she stands in very crucial issues such as the definition of the democratic foundations of the country, the relationship with the legislative, an independent judiciary. How will she come along with this militarization of the country over the last 5 years? Not only security matters, but the military now control the customs and have built a refinery and have built an airport and own an airline. So that's a key issue to define moving forward. And also very key policies such as public finances. We're running the largest public deficit this year over the last 35 years. What the new energy matrix and the new energy policy will be, and also a series of elements in relation to competitiveness of the Mexican economy vis-a-vis
the violence in Mexico is the same propaganda that Trump and the right always say about the place. Different problems like guns in the USA. Wait, what? I mean, the violence in Mexico is definitely very real. Cartel violence specifically is very, very real. It's not like, that's not like a fake problem. That's a very real issue. Just like femicide is a very real issue as well. Those are legitimate problems. It's just that those are such I feel the way I look at it is like it's almost like grading it on a curve, because like what the fuck are you supposed to do? Like there's a 6-year term limit regardless, but beyond that it's like this has been this has been Mexican politics for a very long time. I don't know how any administration can tackle it over the course of like 6 years. Maybe over like 2 decades, 3 decades, you can like try to chip away at it. Why doesn't Mexico crack down on cartel violence and jail every gang member like Nayib Bukele, the greatest leader of modern human history, did? Yeah, great question. That would be impossible. Okay? Because they have American guns and American weapons and American gear and American dollars lining up their pockets. And therefore, they are, in many instances, more fucking powerful than the military. So you can't really do that. And also, that's not a good solution anyway. Mexico's cartel problem is not one that Mexico itself can solve. Mexico's cartel problem can only be solved with American politics. That is the unfortunate reality of the matter. They get their guns from us, and they get their money from us. We are the market, and we give them guns. So there is no way to solve it internally with internal Mexican politics in general. Okay.
The nearshoring expectation effect and our special relationship with the U.S., to which we're the first trading partner and the first source of imports.
A lot to pick up on there, Vanessa, but how would you say she defines herself when it comes to her relationship with the private sector? Is she pro-business?
She has said so. She actually today said it so, and gave a huge emphasis to having a good relationship with the private sector, because I think it needs to be understood that it's not the public sector who creates employment, it's the private sector, and that you need the private sector as allies for development and as allies in particular for specific sectors such as energy, such as infrastructure, and many others. So we hope she moves forward in this direction, which is key for the competitiveness and for productivity of the country.
Vanessa, we were listing some of her impressive credentials. I wonder if you think that that influences the way she thinks, the fact that she is a scientist.
I think that will tell a lot, and she would have a challenge to move from ideology to pragmatism to a more rational perspective of government, and most importantly, to an effective government, because this is exactly what Mexicans want. Mexicans want their problems resolved. They want to live in a more peaceful country. They want to end up violence. They want to have employment. They want to be competitive. They want to have access to health and to social security and to education. So the more practical way in which she addresses the most challenging and pressing challenges for the Mexican society, I think is going to determine her presidency.
We can now reveal that Keir Starmer could be heading to Downing Street with a majority of 194 seats, bigger than Tony Blair achieved in 1997. And that is according to the first major polling projection by YouGov of this campaign, partnering with Sky News. Now, our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been pouring through all the numbers. Sam.
This is an extraordinary moment for the campaign. 194 seats is the projection of YouGov if there was a general election tomorrow. To put that in context for you, Sophie, this is a bigger figure than any election for 100 years. It's bigger than 1997 when Blair won that.
Okay, we're not done with the Mexico elections. So it's almost in an almost narco democracy, by the way. The politics have been very complex in Mexico since it started its inception. No thanks to the U.S. government. Plus, how are we going to stop the narcos when we are the ones funding them by buying their products? Yeah. Now the progressives are in power. They demand an end to the system of violence that the right continued to aid and increase through corruption and austerity for generations. Yeah, look, you have to personally grade on a curve. That's it. Like, that's what you have to do. You have to analyze the situation, you look at the material conditions, recognize how bad things are, and then see if the people that you're electing are moving the needle in positive directions. As far as AMLO's administration goes, there is a lot of things that he ran against, like corruption, ending corruption, which is, kind of laughable. And also tackling narco violence, which again did not happen. There are understandable criticisms of like increased military brutalization. But beyond that, like I said, renationalization of oil, nationalization of lithium. These are all positive. It's funny how leftist leaders and figures in newspapers are saying this is good, but chatters are saying it's bad because their racist families said she sucks. No, I don't think so. I think that there is a understandable growing problem with respect to narco violence. AI dubbed a great Univision video of Claudia's big 3 moments in her political career.
Studying physics at UNAM, Claudia Sheinbaum joined in student movements with a leftist orientation, from which came the leaders that would create the Democratic Revolution Party that Sheinbaum later became a part of. However, politics was not her first preference. Upon finishing university, she dedicated herself to research and education. It was not until the year 2000 that a mutual friend recommended Sheinbaum to AMLO for the position of Environmental Secretary of the then Federal District due to her research on pollution. At this point in time, Claudia Sheinbaum was married to Carlos Guimas, who was governing Tlalpan. But in 2004, he became involved in a corruption scandal when he was caught on video illegally accepting hundreds of thousands of pesos. After confessing his involvement, he stepped down from his position. Journalist Elena Chavez stated it was Sheinbaum who reported her husband to AMLO, thereby gaining his trust. Journalist Arturo Ocano states that Sheinbaum resigned after this incident, but López Obrador did not accept it. Instead, she served as his spokesperson in his first presidential campaign 2 years later. Then in 2015, she was elected to govern Tlalpan, now a member of the National Regeneration Movement Party, also known as Morena, also led by AMLO. 2 years later, tragedy struck.
Chad is literally just being misogynistic. No, Sheltered Rosebud, what the fuck are you talking about? If anything, they don't even give a shit about her or her gender. They care that she is a continuation of AMLO. Please read this without the radfem brain rot that you have. What the fuck are you saying? This has nothing to do with her being a woman. What are we talking about? If anything, this community loves Lula a lot, but we had some of those same issues here during his government growth, a lot of drug factions, increased violence against the black community, increased power of the armed forces, etc. Because it is a positive for women, at least give her the time to prove herself before you jump down her throat. Yeah, again, it doesn't matter. Most people's criticisms in this community literally have nothing to do with nothing to do with her being a woman at all. Okay. The country, Mexico, is as divided as the U.S. This is our Biden versus Trump. People support AMLO are called chairos, and the stereotypes as poor people, uneducated. The people against AMLO are called fifi. Stereotypes as white, middle class, or upper middle, out of touch with Mexico. Chatch is biased against her because she's Mexican. Yeah. Look, you cannot deny one thing, and that is that AMLO's party is fucking profoundly popular. I mean, you look at the fucking elections and it's like, what are we talking about here? The popularity is unimaginable in comparison to like American metrics. So is Modi's though. Yeah, it's a little bit different, don't you think? Like, are we, or unless you're considering AMLO's party to be a fascist one that is running on a platform of fascism. Anyway. I spoke to some Morena members this past weekend. Shout out to Martha Garcia. Unfortunately, nationalization of minerals, especially lithium, won't happen until the next 50 years. Reason because the previous administration gave us, both the U.S. and Canada, a contract of those resources for 100 years. AMLO managed to cut that contract in half. First one of you to compare AMLO to Fetterman, then the other say, hold my beer, and comes out with the Modi take. Yeah. Ultimately, I don't think that I think it's just the best option overall, it seems, out of like any viable parties, and they're pretty fucking popular.
Hello everyone, I'm Rania Kalik with Breakthrough News.
I'm Zoe Alexander with People's Dispatch. We're here in Mexico City and we're joined by Dr. Claudia Sheinbaum, the head of government of Mexico City and one of the founders of Morena Party of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. She's a rising figure in Mexican politics and one of the frontrunners in the 2024 Mexican presidential elections.
Dr. Sheinbaum, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for coming.
So let's jump right into it. You studied environmental engineering in university, and today you are the head of government of one of the largest cities in the world, over 20 million people in Mexico City. And you're also one of the founders of the largest progressive political party in the region, Morena. Can you tell us about your journey into politics? You went from student activism to being an elected official. What were your politics like growing up?
Well, first of all, my background is physics. I studied physics, then energy engineering for my master and my PhD. And when I was 15.
Like, Sophia, you're a 3-month subscriber. You ostensibly are a leftist. I don't personally understand why you're in here talking like this. AMLO gains so much support by giving money to students and those over 60, which sounds good, but he's doing so by printing money. So that's just a ticking time bomb for financial disaster for Mexico. Like, obviously, it's a little bit different when you're a country like Mexico in comparison to a country like America. But this is the exact same kind of fucking sentiment that I hear from, you know, neoliberal right-wingers in the United States of America, straight up Republican Party voters that will say, like, that's what Brandon's doing. He wants to give, you know, free money to the students and take away their student loan debt. Like, it's like, what? Don't post his W's if you want to actually criticize him, because there are valid criticisms you can make about AMLO from a left-wing perspective. I don't even know if what you're saying is completely correct in any case, but you know, because Mexico operates different. Okay.
15 years old. That was the first time that when I was in high school, the first time that I get involved in student mobilization, the student movement, because many people couldn't.
This
get
is from a
into
year ago, by the way,
school.
when she's
So
the
I was
mayor.
in, but I was, you know, in solidarity with those that couldn't have the possibility of studying. And then, you know, I get involved in social politics. And it was very important for us in 1988 when the Ingeniero Cárdenas was...
Yeah, it's different in countries that aren't monetary powerhouses like America is. You got to tread more lightly when it comes to that aspect. Yes, 100%. Like the real money supply inflationary shocks are way more significant. Like modern, even MMT enjoyers, MMT defenders will not make the mistake that you can do MMT in a country like Mexico. You can only do it in a country with like sovereign currency. Whereas like a nation like Mexico is still very much beholden to global market forces, and beyond that are in certain instances almost completely controlled by the IMF and the World Bank regardless. So ultimately though, good. That's crazy. That's a lot. Okay. Yeah.
Candidate for presidency. And it was very important for us because we came from a student movement, and we decided, I said us because our generation, and we decided to go to Ingeniero Cárdenas. And later on, I went to the US to study my PhD. And then I returned and I was part of the university. But I was involved from my parents that they were involved in the 1968 student movement. So I was involved in politics, but my main occupation was to be a mother and to be in the university. And in 2000, President López Obrador, when he was chief of government of Mexico City, he invited me to be the Minister of Environment. And I get involved, and later on in 2006 with the electoral fraud, I was, with López Obrador, even though I returned to university. I was, with him in all the movement that finally get into the burn of Morena.
Great. Well, we know that PRI and PAN really maintained a stranglehold over Mexican politics since 1946. In 2016, Morena was founded to be an alternative to this. And in 2018, of course, Morena achieved a historic electoral victory with the election of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. What does this mean for the course of Mexican politics?
In 2016, when Morena was created, nobody wanted to be in Morena because it was a new party. And in Mexico, you have to win a certain percentage of the votes to be an official party. And it was very difficult because just few people wanted to be in Morena. And the decision to get away from PRD, the party that we were, is that, you know, we thought at that time that there was no possibility in that party that was getting very close to the official party. So we decided to create. I said we decided because there were a lot of assemblies in all the country that decided to create this party. And from 2016 to 2022, it's, you know, 7 years. And now we have, you know, the presidency, 22 governors of 32, the majority in the Congress, the majority in the Senate, and a lot of municipal presidentials. Why? It's because people want to change. And it's a change from economic model. We, you know, neoliberalism now is in the past. And we have now a government that thinks in the majority, thinks in Mexican people rather than thinks in a privileged group. So, and right now we have the majority, and that's because people are, you know, happy. Even though a lot of media is against the president and against Morena, you know, people wants this change and wants this fourth transformation, as we call it, to continue.
So one thing that confirms some of what you're saying is the fact that you're currently leading all major voter intention polls for the 2024 presidential election. What do you think has led to this support?
Okay, first of all, I think it's that I have been in the movement always. I've been near President López Obrador, you know, always since 2023 years. And at some point, people remember that I was, you know, in the Adelitas movement that we have in 2008 against the privatization of oil, of the Mexican oil, of Pemex. And I was, you know, in many movements. So they think that I can continue what President López Obrador is doing.
Oh shit, I was muted. Sorry, I didn't realize. If you look at the 2024 Mexico presidential election live results, she didn't just win 60%. She literally fucking wiped the goddamn map.
This news is front.
I mean, it's crazy. The problem here is that most of the members of Morena used to be members of PRI and PAN and other corrupt parties. At the end of the day, Mexican political class all comes from the same sewer and the same kind of rats. I need to understand what this chatter's not this chatter's gripes with AMLO, but I need to understand who this chatter thought would have been a better alternative. Like, who do you think was better? Because you keep saying it's about picking what the most pressing issue. The issue is Mexico's going towards a state communism while pretending that it's socialism. If she studies what she said, it'd be great. But that's just not the reality. The proof is in how Mexico hasn't gotten any better in the past 6 years in the things that are most important. Like, who was a better alternative in your assessment? I've seen detractors, maybe like Sophia, who think cartels are the number one problem. Cartels are the number one problem. You know what I mean? They are the number one problem. The problem, however, with cartels is like tackling cartels in Mexico is like tackling capitalism in America. Okay? The way I look at it is like if I had a fucking candidate American comparisons don't even fucking work that well because the situation in America is really dire, really awful, but like nowhere near. Like Mexico is not even a comparison, okay? We did not have 37 fucking political assassinations this time around. You know what I mean? Like while we were while we were having our elections, right? We don't have like 100,000 people that have gone missing. I have no problem discussing the things. The only reason why they picked, I don't even know how to say this name still, was because AMLO picked beef with her. She was a trash pick too, but AMLO just wants to be a dictator, so continuing his handpick is just concerning. Okay, but you're not giving an alternative. So chill. So chill. So chill. So chill. I'm a cartel member in Mexico. We are very chill. There's no problem here. People like that chatter mostly complain. All we do is watch DBC. Okay. People like that chatter mostly complain about them being tied to narcos, but they will never leave. They have control and always have had control over the country. The difference when Calderon won is that he went to war versus the cartels to give the power to other cartels. Do you think cartels in Mexico will eventually fizzle out like the mafia? No. I think that organized crime in Mexico is going to literally turn into fucking what the Yakuza is inevitably, but with more power, where they will just have like fiefdoms, which they currently do, but they will become, I guess, like one avenue out of it is to completely like legalize their operations or recognize them as like genuine fiefdoms. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I don't know how there's no fizzling out. They have a firm stranglehold on the American drug market in general. Like they have an incredible fucking they have all the supply. They have an incredible fucking base of support in America that will take all the demand. They have an endless stream of guns going into Mexico that has basically given them the power of actual militaries, sometimes more powerful than the militaries themselves. These are bad things, right? Yes, none of these are good things. The only way, that's why I said the only way to tackle the cartel issue, cartel are literally political parties, law. They have people on the inside. OC, organized crime, is so embedded in politics that you need to deal with the underlying issue of why people join organized crime rather than a life of honest work. Yeah. And that can only come through, genuine solutions, genuine fixes to systemic inequality. But ultimately, if you want to tackle the other aspect of, the cartel supremacy in Mexico, you have to deal with it by, it's an American issue.
The second thing is who I am and what I have done in Mexico City. If they didn't like a scientist and a politic to be a president, they probably don't prefer myself. And also my work in Mexico City. If my job here in Mexico have been bad and people were, against me, but probably I couldn't go, to the next step. And finally, believe it or not, is because I'm a woman. It's now time for women. It's incredibly, it's not only the social movement of young women, and it's also that in Mexico, we have already 9 governors and many women participating in politics, so it's not strange. And at some point, people see that it's good to have a president, a female president.
Well, we'd like to talk about one of those reasons.
Hasan's lack of knowledge to Mexican politics leaves him prone to fall for right-wing talking points because he's viewing this from an American lens. Wait, what? I don't think so. A chatter is a conservative. I literally said that. I said that she is arguing on conservative talking points. Just because I'm asking questions to a chatter doesn't mean that I'm like it doesn't mean that I'm lapping up what she's fucking saying. The fuck? It's good to investigate these sorts of criticisms further so that everyone can become more knowledgeable about the counter positions. I do this for every single issue. I'm going to maintain my charitability when someone comes in with right-wing talking points, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I believe everything you just said. Why do so many people come into the chat and claim you lack knowledge for so many issues? Because there are areas of expertise that I have. I wouldn't say like full-blown expertise in the same realm as like a researcher or whatever, but there are issues that I am knowledgeable on and issues that I am not as knowledgeable on. This is definitely one of them for sure. I'm not like super tapped into the intricacies of domestic politics in Mexico. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean I'm like eating right-wing propaganda.
You spoke about, which is your role as head of government of Mexico City. Again, a city of over 20 million people, which is very significant. And you were elected by popular vote again in 2018. As head of government, you've taken on many initiatives to address some of the structural issues facing the city. And one of them that we'd like to talk about is, of course, femicide and the issue of women, which is a huge challenge for Mexico. It's a huge challenge for the region in general. But in your role, you've taken a lot of different initiatives to address this issue, to make the city a safer place for women. So can you talk a bit about those initiatives?
Yes, in November 2019, I decided to make an alarm for women. We could say that. And so we developed 11 points for women to be safe in the city. And we have now done more than that. I can tell you some examples. For example, we have 27 centers to attend women that have violence at home. We have passed many laws. One that I like to say in many places is that, when we think violence in the household or in families, what we think is, let's take the woman and her children to a refuge.
Yeah.
How do you say it in English?
Refuge.
Refuge?
Yeah.
So I asked myself, why do you have to take out the women and put it and hide her, right? So now we have a law here in Mexico City that it's the aggressor goes out of the house. So even if the property is not of the women, of the woman, of her, she has the right to stay at home. And the man or the aggressor has preventive measures, or even he goes to jail if you know, the judge decided. So it's a complete different way of thinking. And also we have made 800 kilometers of safe corridors with a lot of light and buttons for help, for the police to come. We have a special number. It's 765 to call for if you have you have problems, if you're a woman, and many other things that. So we don't know if there are more feminicides now than before, because before they were not counted, but we have to take care of that. Yeah.
Calling all men aggressors, yikes. Bro, imagine fucking... Imagine looking at a country like Mexico, femicide is a massive issue, and being like, wow, it's really fucked up. This rat femme is chirping about all men. She wants to kill all men. It's like, bro, that's crazy. Calm down, okay? Fucking calm down. Cool it.
And I mean, you've dealt with so many other issues as well. One of the biggest ones affecting the entire planet, of course, is climate change. And you're an environmental engineer. As you mentioned, you were also Secretary of Environment. And you were part of the UN panel on climate change in 2007, which won a Nobel Peace Prize. And Mexico City, like all major cities, deals with many issues related to this, such as access to water or pollution, just the general impact of climate change. During your time in office, what have...
She thanks Jesus in her acceptance speech. I think it might be her husband. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Was mildly surprised to see President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum thanking Jesus in her acceptance speech, as she is of a secular Jewish background, only to realize that she was referring to her husband, Jesus Tariba? Yeah. It wasn't. Why would they even elect her? She's not even Mexican. She's Lithuanian Jewish. I like that this is Goat K Kona Savage. I like that this is just pure anti-Semitism. Like, literally, just nothing else. I know I wanted some hogs in here, but not like this, okay? Just absolutely feral. I mean, just vintage, yeah. Yeah, just like Obama's not a real American. You know what I'm saying, brother? The head of the Democratic Majority for Israel said that too. The co-chair of Democratic Majority for Israel tried to smear the incoming Mexican president by implying she isn't Jewish enough. He said she even thanked Jesus for her victory. Important to note that she is not involved in the Jewish community and thanked Jesus for her victory, which is literally the name of her husband. But that, you know, she's not invested in her Jewish roots, and also, guess what, dude? She married a guy named Jesus. I mean, I don't know. Mexican is a Catholic country to the core. Religious diversity is scarce. That's why so many people are against her Jewish background. She runs under the impression that she isn't religious. I don't think she is religious. I think she comes from a fucking commie family, dude. That's all I need to know. Marrying someone named Jesus is kind of anti-Semitic. Yeah, she's not a religious person at all. What the fuck are we talking about? On that front, I would even go so far as to say she's better than fucking AMLO. Like, what are we talking about? She, unironically, in my opinion, everything that I've read so far, she literally has a lot of aspects to her that were AMLO's biggest weaknesses from my understanding. More dynamic, a woman. That's like, you know, automatic feminism there. Her background as a stem cell. Her work in her work in environmental activism. Now, obviously, there are glaringly obvious weaknesses. For example, her silence is violence, I will say, in terms of the issue on wood elves. Obviously, we don't know how much she's talked about it in the past. I tried to investigate and I found 0 tweets from her about duendes. I don't know if she believes that they are real or not. Like, this is a major issue for me. Personally, I think it's important, but ultimately, I think her silence speaks volumes. On the issue of wood elves. Okay. Claudia Sheinbaum has won Mexico's presidential election in a landslide. In her victory speech, she paid homage to the social movements of the past and promised to continue Morena's impressive record of social progress. The Morena leadership holed up in the Hilton Hotel in Mexico City was in a state of quiet shock. They knew they were going to win Mexico's presidential election, but not by that much. As results trickled in yesterday evening, it became clear the long-expected victory was a drubbing. So far, Claudia Sheinbaum holds a 30-point lead over her conservative rival, Xochitl Galvez, 58.3% to 28.7%, with the third-party candidate, Jorge Alvarez Maynez, coming in at 10.5%. Mexico said no to men, okay? Enough men. We got women now. Women are in charge. Okay? According to the projections made by the National Electoral Institute, Sheinbaum's final total is expected to fall within 58.3 to 60.1%, outperforming all but a pair of the final pre-election polls. According to the Institute's Conteo Rapido, or fast count, the landslide was expected to carry over into Congress as well, with Morena and his allies winning up to 380 of the 500 seats in the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, and up to 88 of the 128 seats in the Senate. This would put the center-left coalition within a range of its ambitious goal of achieving a qualified majority of 2/3, which would allow it to pass constitutional reforms on its own. Together with the state legislatures it controls, not only did Morena win the all-important mayorship of Mexico City with the candidate Clara Brugada, the Morena coalition is also set to pick up at least 6 of the 8 governor's races for grabs. This is like, people that are upset at technically, you know, democracy in this situation. Now, I understand why people would be fearful about the governing mandate that this party now has, considering Mexico's history. I think that's what a lot of people are worried about. A lot of people are cynical and very worried about it, but ultimately this is literally a consequence of the party's popularity due to the party's many different policies of, as far as I understand, trying to tackle some of the underlying material issues in Mexico. To put Morena's victory in perspective, Sheinbaum is on course to best Andrés Manuel López Obrador's 2018 landslide victory of 53% by some 5 to 7 points. Where AMLO received a historic total of 30 million votes, Sheinbaum will have received some 35 million. Similarly, Galvez was running about 10 to 12 points behind the Conservative Party's total in that election in 2018. The Conservative Party's Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, and National Action Party, PAN, ran separately this year. They ran in a coalition, but instead of adding in numbers, the coalition wound up subtracting. Many of you were naysayers of duendes and their power to their power to offer you wish fulfillment, but it seems like, who's laughing now? Okay, who's laughing now? A lot of you said it's not real. Wood elves are not real. They can't hurt you. Meanwhile, you know what AMLO was doing? Whispering to the wood elves about his dreams of increasing the power, the popularity of his party. Turns out that's a dub for him. A dub for the wood elves, and also a dub for him. What is this wood elf thing? If you don't know about it, don't ask about it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. A refusal to be goated. True to her scientific background, Sheinbaum ran on a disciplined, methodical campaign, taking nothing for granted despite holding a virtually unchanged lead since announcing her candidacy. Sheinbaum racked up the miles, holding 3 times as many rallies as Galvez, where Galvez veered from one uncosted policy proposal to another. Sheinbaum rolled out a 100-point program that includes extending social programs and scholarships, continuing annual minimum wage increases. That was massively popular. Consolidating Mexico's push towards national health care, building 1 million affordable homes on a rent-to-buy plan, constructing 7 long-distance train lines, avoiding the maquiladora experience of the 1990s by mandating that companies investing in the nearshoring phenomenon provide higher wages and benefits, and in what is certain to continue, raising the shackles of multinational energy interests, a public sector-led energy transition building on Mexico's state-owned oil, electricity, and lithium companies. Throughout the campaign and over the course of 3 debates, Sheinbaum refused to be goaded by opposition candidate Galvez's scattershot series of attacks that got nastier over time. Galvez, playing to the hilt a go-negative campaign strategy, attacked everything from her character to her family to her record as Mexico City's mayor, winding up a series of dog whistle insinuations about Sheinbaum's Jewish heritage. Sheinbaum also refused to be goaded by those who repeated that she is going to be a puppet of outgoing President AMLO. Every time someone would try to insist on the need to create a more individualistic image, as if she were marketing a new brand of cereal detergent, Sheinbaum would calmly explain that she represents a social movement and that her administration will proudly be segundo piso, or second floor, of Mexico's 4th transformation. And she did it all with the poker face persona that served her in good stead as mayor of Mexico City, one that, eschewing the attempt to force a lofty oratorical style, asserted her authority with understated consistency both in interviews and on the stump. And the voters approved. Okay. Sheinbaum's victory also came despite a coordinated international campaign of media and bots that attempted to paint AMLO and Morena as being in collusion with drug cartels. This is only a chapter of the nonstop media onslaught that sneered and slandered its way through AMLO's administration without deigning to learn about what was happening underneath its very limited radar. Maybe that's part of the reason why the chatters are coming in here and saying, like, no, AMLO met with Chapo's mom. They are in the pocket of cartels as well. And that, I mean, there is a very real escalation of cartel violence for sure. Okay. Way more consequential and way more significant than the violence at the top of the hour ad break that chatters constantly chirp about. Like, that's the biggest type of violence that chatters see on a daily basis and fucking complain about on a daily basis. So, you know, that's important to recognize that you can defend yourself against that violence at the top of the hour ad break as long as you subscribe for $5 or free. I can't believe they wrote this in the Jacobin, by the way. Why does the Jacobin know about the top of the hour ad break? King Henry IV, thank you for the 10 community gift to subs, allowing 10 people to no longer be victim to the top of the hour ad break. The 3 minutes that of ads that come at the top of the hour. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. For the election, a gaggle of foreign journalists touched down in Mexico City, marveling that such a machista country would be electing a woman president, and so comfortably. Once again, all the comfortable tropes, election of state voters, bought out by social programs, religious populace, and the thrall of a handpicked successor of a messianic leader were trundled out. Anything to avoid granting agency to Mexican voters are seeing what has been happening on the ground, a policy-driven process of party realignment in which working-class voters scattered across parties in the 2018 election have concentrated in Morena while maintaining the party's cross-class coalition largely intact. After a victory acknowledgement in the Hilton, Sheinbaum made her way to Mexico City's main square, the Zocalo, where, I don't know if I'm saying that right. There, she paid homage to the social movement as a path from workers to students, teachers to farmers, and read out the names of women who have played pivotal roles in Mexico's history. As the latest member of that list, Sheinbaum will have an enormous electoral mandate, even larger than AMLO's. As of October 1st, the Presidente will now be the Presidenta. Zocalo. Okay. This article is really bad. Morena is deep in ties to the cartel, as all Mexican governments have been, and there's no pushback against them. AMLO severely lowered collaboration with U.S. drug agencies, and now... I'm sorry, I'm not fucking rating Mexico's presidential performance off of how well they collaborate with the motherfucking DEA, okay? That is crazy. That is a ridiculous metric of success. You again, that feels more like a dub that you just posted in the chat. That is insane. He has not caught any major drug capos. Remember, they let Chapo's son run away. It's important to cover that Mexico's government is and has always been tainted by narco money. Yes, this is true. But the notion that like American federal agencies are going to be very helpful when they are like, I would say, almost directly responsible for so much of the cartel's prominence and power. It's awesome to think that, like, you know, it's awesome to think that you know, we should be rating the Mexican president's performance off of how well they collaborate with the American federales. Anyway. I share with you my 100 proposals for the construction of the second floor of the fourth transformation. You can consult them in the following link on my website. Wait. Oh. Fuck. How do we Google Translate this shit? Is it just my algorithm, or is there not a single good word about her on Twitter? I think the most suspicious thing overall is how the media has been, like, mainstream media outlets have been like relatively pro Sheinbaum, which I find rather odd. Like, they just say, "Oh, she's a woman," and that's good, and they just like move on. You know what I mean? Which I think is like strange. Not the Spanish outlets. No. I'm not talking about Spanish outlets. I'm talking about like NPR. I would go so far as to say they haven't even fucking ripped AMLO as much. Like, I know you are becoming a conspiracist, lol. Wait, what? No. What are you talking about? There is, in comparison to prior years, for like the past 100 years of American media and its alignment with State Department interests, the pink tide that occurred in Latin American countries did not get the same level of coverage, with obvious exceptions. Like Evo, who is right here, with the coup that occurred. The Bolivian coup, like, was a moment where people were just like, yeah, these guys aren't fucking psychopathic, rabid, violent Christo-fascists that are physically trying to overthrow the Evo Morales government. It's actually, you know, it's actually the mandate, the popular mandate. I promise. Now, that in and of itself was like a brief moment, but beyond that, you haven't really seen a shit ton. You haven't really seen a shit ton of like negative sentiment being deployed. I don't know if it's because they just don't have the smoke for it. You know? I don't know if they just don't have the time for it. I don't know what it is. I genuinely don't know what the fuck it is. I am in Bolivia. It was the popular mandate. What the fuck are you talking about, my man? Your takes on Latin American politics are so out removed. Dude, how could... There's no way. This is a bait, right? Are you doing a bait or are you being serious? Like, there's no fucking shot Not real Bolivian. Wait, what? I can take a pig if you like. No, I don't. I'm not saying that you're not a real Bolivian. I'm just shocked that you are talking about shit. You're talking about shit that is like well established to. When you read comments like that, just remember all the your Ukraine takes are bad. I think that's because there's been a growing movement of leftists in Latin America that I would say wouldn't look well for mainstream media to attack anyone, especially with outspoken leaders like Lula and Petro. You are a leftist. There are a lot of Central and South Americans that will call you a communist and be against you sharing leftist ideology when talking about Latin countries. Bro, this person is my age, Bolivian, and has been in here since 2022 and has previously subscribed for 10 fucking months. The idea that like the idea that there wasn't a fucking coup in Bolivia and it was actually a popular uprising, and it wasn't like a violent. A lot of media portray people opposing the electoral fraud as neo-Nazis, Christians, crazy people. The major players involved were absolutely. First of all, the media did not portray them as such. The media did lie about them. Okay? Mainstream media unironically dropped the ball in a historic fashion. And that's what I talked about specifically here, which a lot of those pro-NATO, pro-State Department, but supposedly leftist content creators also yelled at me about. But that was quickly fucking packed up. That's crazy. It's like, yeah, it's like thinking about the last Cuban coup attempt, which wasn't even really a coup attempt. I'm just saying, like, all of this spells trouble for the CIA involvement in Latin America in general. The media defended the Christo-fascis. Yeah, they said it was a popular revolution. Like they literally they act like it was just a thing that happened. Like this woman. Wait, oh no, where was the other ones? Hold on. The lady who succeeded Evo literally wanted to ban indigenous people and the indigenous religion, calling it satanic. Definitely not a fucking... It didn't happen in like 2 weeks. Protests were going on in Bolivia since 2018. Evo cheated the Constitution twice to keep getting reelected. Yes, I know. I don't know if you know this, but like... I don't know if you know this, but I am in favor. I mean, again, FDR. FDR. When someone is cooking, I don't have an issue with it. I do care about, I mean, I think that older leadership in left-wing parties is genuinely a genuinely a problem because they just like refuse to they refuse to bring up new talent and young leadership, and that becomes a leadership issue down the line. I ultimately don't care as much about like these limits, especially when the opposition is just fucking insane. In the afternoon of the 12th of March, 2021, the prosecutor's office issued an arrest warrant against Inés, 5 of her former ministers, and multiple former members of the high command of the armed forces. The news was broken by Inés herself, who published a photo of the document through her social networks. The political persecution has become. The Associated Press described Inés's apprehension as a crackdown on opposition. Coup 1 and coup cases. Family, friends of mine are genuinely afraid that Sheinbaum will make Mexico into Venezuela, especially because Moreno has worked to remove protectionist business practices like in agriculture and the party being left-wing. Plus, this reminds them of the Ejido system and Echeverria Latin us runs on this talking point and puts fear into people with what they already have experienced. Coup 1 and Coup 2 are cases in investigation because they have no proof the military pushed Evo to resign. Okay. It just happened to be that way. Dude, that's what every right-wing person in Latin America says for every left-wing government. No, I know. Oh. Defense Minister Luis Fernando Lopez and Interior Minister Arturo Murillo have taken refuge in the United States, which is odd, but I guess it's because of severe political persecution, which is why you escape to America. That's not historically what happens in Latin American countries when you do a coup and sometimes it fails if you're if the people are aggressive enough, and then they fucking come to the United States of America, or sometimes or sometimes England. Yeah, people hating AMLO have been saying for years he would become a dictator and will want to stay in power even though Mexico's constitution doesn't allow it. Now that it didn't happen, they're saying Claudia is his puppet and he'll stay in power that way. An audit by the Organization of American States, which releases a full report afterwards, concluded that significant irregularities happened in the... Wait, by the way, the third paragraph is from the OAS. Observers from the European Union released a report with similar findings and conclusions to the OAS. The military and police of Bolivia, along with the Bolivian Workers' Center, recommended President Evo Morales to resign. He did, accompanied by other resignations by high-level politicians throughout the day, some citing fears for the safety of their families. The government of Mexico offered political asylum to Morales the following day, which Morales accepted a day afterwards. Yeah, he had to escape to Mexico because they were fucking butchering people. The OAS. All these anti-Claudia chatters here are just a reminder of pro-white-skin culture, middle-upper-class aspirationists with neoliberal and pro-capitalist sentiments. Social was the candidate of the right, and the parties supporting her were the same ones that complied always with American interests and privatized Mexico's natural resources. They're liberal. Think about the class demographics that watches your stream in the global south. It's not shocking that they're libbed up. Oh, no, I know that. Yeah, brother, I don't think like fucking indigenous and poor Mexican populations are fucking tuning in to an American white guy from Turkey talking about Mexico and Mexican politics. This is something that I try to explain to my audience on a regular fucking basis as well. I personally have a lot of criticisms for Latin American countries, Latin American governance that I regularly repeat. However, having said that, one thing that you have to always keep in mind, something that I always mention, is that you will never, in American media, never, ever, ever hear from the majority working class background people in the countries that we're discussing, because the American media will almost always cover business interests and prioritize business interests and those who are representatives for business interests. This is why people are like genuinely confused when we talk about Maduro. Maduro, for example, for many of his faults and failures, rode the wave of Chavez's broad popular mandate in Venezuela. But you would never ever fucking hear that in American news until it became a major problem. So you would never recognize the long staying power of Chavez's popularity in Venezuela, because the people who are pro Chavez, the Chavistas, for the most part, are not getting broadly represented in American news or global news at all. They're not. You're not going to hear from them for the most part. Maybe Parenti will fucking talk about it or whatever, but you're not going to hear from them in general. I feel like you fell a little bit in the propaganda hole on the Bolivia topic. There was a lot of nuisance that the Evo government didn't let international press to show. Brother, international press was eating the dick of the people that you are currently defending in this chat. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. If I fell a little bit into the propaganda hole, by the way, you mean nuance, not nuisance, but it's fine. It's ESL. I understood what he was trying to say. But if I was falling in the propaganda hole, I would have been like, yeah, there was a fucking coup that happened because Evo was not popular in Bolivia, and he resigned out of disgrace because he was like cooking the books and cooking the elections, and the OAS is a institution that is infallible and the most moral institution, and that they were completely right, and the rabid psychopathic Christo-fascist weirdos and their gang of thugs that were butchering people on the streets were actually in the right, because that's just popular uprising shit. You know? That's what I would be doing. Latin Us is the news chain founded by PRI dinosaurs, old-ass crusty party members, and oligarchs to basically run propaganda on Morena and Sheinbaum by using stupid comparisons like Vuvuzela. Yeah. I never expected to see supporters for the right-wing Latin politicians in here. Are there any Bolsonaristas in here too? There were. When we were talking about Brazilian politics, there would be Bolsonaristas as well. My point is this, okay? It's important to recognize why some of these politicians are called authoritarian dictator monsters and violent. It's important to recognize like who's saying that, what business interests do they represent, and what, let's say, working class people in the nations think about their leadership. Debate Claudia Sheinbaum. What?
Funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Gonzalez. We turn now to Mexico, where this Sunday millions of voters are poised to elect the first woman president in Mexico's history. The landmark moment has filled many with hope, as Mexico has one of the highest rates of gender violence and femicide in Latin America, with at least 10 women murdered in Mexico every single day. Voters will be choosing between frontrunners Claudia Sheinbaum and Xochitl Gálvez, third candidate, Jorge Alvarez Méndez. Sheinbaum has maintained a significant lead in the polls ahead of June 2nd elections. She is the former mayor of Mexico City, member of the ruling Left Morena party, seen as a continuation of the current president, AMLO, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, while Gálvez, a former senator, is backed by a coalition that includes the conservative PRI and PAN parties. The PRI, or Institutional Revolutionary Party, ruled Mexico uninterrupted for 71 years until the 2000s. Rampant violence, perpetuated in part by the decades-long U.S.-backed so-called war on drugs, is a central issue. This campaign cycle has been one of the deadliest in Mexico, with at least 34 candidates or aspiring candidates assassinated since September. Immigration and Mexico-U.S. relations are also pivotal issues. In a minute, we'll be joined by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Maria Hinojosa to discuss the historic elections. But first, let's turn to clips of Maria's recent interviews with both front-runners, Sheinbaum and Gálvez.
I went to a private school for a year on a full government scholarship. All the kids I knew are shouting at me for sharing a picture of Claudia winning. They're all chirping, saying Mexican democracy is over. We shouldn't let poor, uneducated people vote. They aren't ready for it yet.
Which recently aired on Latino USA. Maria Hinojosa and her colleague, Penile Ramirez, were in Mexico City earlier this year, where they spoke to Claudia Sheinbaum at a campaign rally. They asked her how she'd handle immigration.
What is your message to Latino Mexican voters in the United States about this election and your candidacy?
We're going to fight for them, for their rights, and we're going to fight for the families in Mexico. We want welfare for all the Mexicans.
Now you have said a few days ago that Biden and Trump should stop talking about the Mexican elections. Why you said that, and what's your plan regarding immigration?
The best way to reduce migration is to invest in the countries where people have to live and want to go to the U.S. Either if Biden wins or Trump wins. There are a lot of problems in the U.S., and it's better that their campaign not use Mexico as the problem. We are not the problem, we're part of the solution.
They met Xochitl Gálvez while the presidential candidate traveled to New York to meet with Mexican voters here. This is what Gálvez said.
So what is your fresh, new approach towards the issue of immigration?
Primero, entender que el fenómeno de la migración es un fenómeno mundial.
Now, she did not really answer the question, but she did say to us that we needed to understand that immigration is a worldwide problem, and therefore the solution, she said, was to sit and talk.
Pues entonces no nos sentemos, no hablemos, no hagamos cooperación profunda, y se van a seguir muriendo jóvenes en este país.
She replied that if we don't sit and have a dialogue, young people will keep dying on both sides of the border.
Xochitl Gálvez, the other Mexican presidential candidate. For more, we are joined by Maria Hinojosa, the Pulitzer Prize.
That's brilliant.
Prize-winning journalist and founder of Futuro Media.
That's brilliant.
Host of Latino USA, which has just released its new episode titled "A Presidenta Will Lead Femicide-Plagued Mexico." Maria, it's great to have you with us at the table. Why don't you start off by talking about the historic significance of these elections and what it means for what's happening in Mexico today?
You know what's interesting, Amy, because you and I have been doing this for a while, right? The reason why two women end up being the two front-runner candidates is not just like, oh, it just happened. There was a tremendous, decades-long work by feminists in Mexico, along with feminists all over Latin America, pushing for equality. pushing for equity for women. In the face of violence, in the face of impunity, the feminist movement in Mexico and Latin America just kept on pushing to the point where you were able to make it by law that there had to be parity in the government, and this leads to both women ending up as candidates. And it is historic. You know, I'm asking the question. It's a little, you know, but which country is more machista? The United States, that has two old men, one accused of strange and weird sexual and cover-ups, etc., and fraud, etc., and the other one who's just quite elderly. And in Mexico, you have two women. And so what they're talking about in the political debate in Mexico is really, frankly, light years away from the political debate that we're having in this.
I believe one of the main issues you've seen in chat that you have not seen is that we as Mexicans are not saying that Xochitl would have been a better candidate, but AMLO seriously fucked up the national security issue, and it's disheartening to hear you hand wave it away. We know he could not have solved it, but he did make it way worse. Brother or sister or MB, I'm not hand waving it away. Okay? I'm not. I'm recognizing it while also simultaneously telling you that there isn't much any Mexican president in a 6-year timeline could do anything about it. It's an American-born problem. Okay? The best you can do as far as like dealing with this domestically is try to improve the material conditions for working class Mexicans to the best of your ability so that there isn't like a steady flow of new recruits. But even beyond that, it doesn't matter. There's like, that will still not stop it. So on that basis, it seems like AMLO's policies were ultimately the best Mexico was going to get. That's all I'm saying. I never said he's perfect. He's awesome. He's my GOAT. I have not seen any candidates in the previous election, or I have not seen any candidates in this election that were offering an alternative that was going to actually work, or that had a track record of success in this field, whether it be their party, whether it be their party's history, or what their party has done. No, I didn't say he was my GOAT. I said he's my GOAT only because of the duendes thing, only because of the wood elves, the truth about the wood elves. That's it. And I will stand on that. He is cool for that.
Country. Mexico, strangely, Mexico, Amy, becomes like a North Star. When would I have said that? I could have never imagined. And having said that,
you were born in Mexico
and I was
City.
born in Mexico, and I've watched the entire political process. I'm not Pollyanna. Impunity and violence against women, corruption, the assassination of multiple candidates. It's a real problem. But Mexico has a different political debate happening now.
And Maria, I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the major differences between the two candidates policy-wise. Clearly, Claudia Sheinbaum is being supported by the current president, AMLO, and she appears to have a very big lead in the polls. But your sense of their differences?
So they will both say that they are from the left. Xochitl will say that she's center-left. Claudia Sheinbaum will say that she's obviously more to the left. The policy differences have to do kind of with the historical differences between their two parties, as it were. The Morena party, which was a street activist movement that now has ended up in the presidential palace, versus you have the PRI and the PAN. These are the two oldest parties in Mexico. It would be like the Republicans and the Democrats getting together to support a candidate. It is a very strange coalition. And so what they represent is actually these two very different parts of American history. Having said that, there's a big critique that Claudia Sheinbaum will continue the policies of AMLO. She responds in a retort that's saying that's a misogynistic question. You're saying that because I'm a woman, I'm only going to follow what a man has done before me. Xochitl Gálvez says that she's going to change things, that she will root out corruption, that she has a vision. But interestingly, Juan, when I was with her and spent an hour with her, and 2 days later, I was trying to process, like, what really happened in that hour-long interview? What were we able to get at? What does she really represent? And I came to a strange conclusion. It is strange, but I feel like her entire candidacy is strange because of these parties supporting her. And I said, it's like she's the Sarah Palin of Mexico, the center-left Sarah Palin of Mexico, in the sense that she's kind of like, hi, I'm here, and I just kind of ended up as the main candidate here, and I'm bright, and I'm smart, and I'm a survivor, and everything is going to be fine. And it's like, Mexico is much more complex than that. You know that. Why do you continue to kind of do this performative political stunts? Even here in New York, she ended up riding her bike to the New York Times for a series of interviews there. One, she wasn't wearing a helmet. Who rides a bike in New York without a helmet?
People say Xochitl is center left because she had to shift their policies a lot to the left to be able to slightly compete with Morena, because the common Mexican person despises PRI and PAN because the country's history and plugged in politicians getting rich off people's tax money, which is very stupid because she's neoliberal at best.
Helmet. And also, why do you want to ride a bike in Times Square? So she does that, and people kind of pick up on these performative acts that she does.
No!
And also, I wanted to ask you about the importance of the Mexican diaspora in the United States. For several years now, Mexicans abroad who are Mexican citizens have been able to vote in the election. Can you talk about the kind of interest there appears to be in the U.S. in Mexican communities?
You know what, Juan? I have been trying to get my Mexican citizenship back because when I became an American citizen in 1989, I had to give up my Mexican citizenship. It got messed up because of the pandemic. I'm just one of probably millions of Mexicans who would like to be able to have a vote and a participation in the Mexican political process. When you look at how close recent Mexican elections for president have been, you can understand why Mexican parties, presidential campaigns, are coming to ask for Mexicans in the United States to vote. It's small now, maybe 200,000 or so, but if you continue to push to get after these votes of Mexicans living in the United States, it could actually be quite influential. And I think for the politics of Mexicans living in the United States, it's a welcome idea that we don't have to decide, am I from here, am I from there? We actually can vote in both places.
I wanted to go to some of the clips, the interviews you've done. This is Xochitl Gálvez speaking to you, Maria, about her experience with gender violence.
How do you define feminism?
O sea, yo creo en la igualdad sustantiva en todos los temas, en nuestra vida personal.
She said that she believes in equality for all women in terms of political, economic, and reproductive rights. And to emphasize why this matters to her, she told us she suffered violence as a child.
Porque tuve un papá alcohólico y era brutalmente violento.
This story has become a part of Xochitl Gálvez's stump speech. Her father, she says, was a violent man who terrorized her as a child. One time, she tells us in the interview, he pointed a shotgun at her mother and threatened her. She says that they escaped, but that this experience marked her. And then I asked her what she thinks the solution might be for this kind of gender-based violence in Mexico.
Entonces creo que las mujeres deben de tener la certeza.
What Xochitl said to us was that women in Mexico need a support system in cases of violence, and that men need to know that if they commit violence against women, they will be prosecuted.
This is another clip of Latina USA's interview with Claudia Sheinbaum. Futura Media executive producer Penile Ramirez asks her about her presidency, what it would mean for Mexico. She spoke to her at a campaign rally in Mexico City.
What's going to be unique about your government?
Well, you know, I'm a scientist, so I'm going to put a lot of effort in science and development. We're going to go for women's rights, and we're going to continue bringing education, a good health system for the people, housing, and what I call the rights for the Mexican people.
So that's Claudia Sheinbaum, well, she is the front runner for sure. They both call themselves feminists. Women got the right to vote in Mexico when? In 1953. And what about abortion?
So abortion right now actually is more progressive in Mexico than in the United States. This is actually not like a primary issue in the presidential campaign right now, unlike here in the United States, because what's happening in Mexico is trending towards legalization across the entire country. There are parts of in Mexican states where it is legal, but it's not kind of the kind.
Catholic country, by the way. Mexican women fought fucking hard for that shit. Catholic country, by the way. We have a Catholic president, but, you know, look at our situation.
Of abortion politics that we're having here, where you would expect
Catholic dubs across the board, even with Ireland, too.
Amy, a Catholic country, to be making the decisions on abortion like the ones that are being made in the United States that says it has no relationship with the church in its politics. So right now, again, for women on the issue of reproductive rights, more progressive, but on the issue of violence, on the issue of impunity, the number of female candidates running at different parties in different states, much lower down the ballot, being assassinated. It's really a huge issue, and this is the primary contradiction for Mexico.
Ireland was very late to legalizing abortion for EU standards. No, I know, but they did. That's what I was saying. What? I was here. I covered it when it happened.
You're going to elect a woman, but you still haven't resolved the fact that women are being murdered at the rate of about 10 to 11 every single day, and the impunity that comes with it.
And Maria, in terms of this issue of Mexico electing a woman president, several Latin American countries have already done so. Chile, Honduras, Argentina, Brazil, and now Mexico. And yet here in the United States, the potential for electing a woman president will have to be postponed for another 4 or 8 years. I'm wondering your sense of the difference, especially with the United States supposedly claiming to represent a much more forward-looking view on equality between the genders.
Well, Juan, you won't be surprised when I say that the North needs to learn from the South. There's always this perspective that the North, the United States, is leading the way, is the way to go. And in fact, what the United States and the feminist movement in the United States needs to do is to look at what happened in Mexico and the rest of Latin America. The number of countries that have elected a woman president in Latin America is stunning, considering the fact that the United States is still at about a third of women in Congress. You have countries like Rwanda that have legalized parity in political representation, and our country is lagging behind. It is huge, Juan. On the issue of immigration and whether or not Claudia or Xochitl, more likely it will be Claudia who ends up as president, will do something profoundly different, fresh, stand up to the United States, say no more remain in Mexico, begin to do.
Yeah, no, the best part about it was that the right wing in Mexico was saying that Claudia is a Stalinist, or that she was female Stalin. I saw those posters, which from my perspective, like, that goes pretty fucking hard. But ultimately, like, a lot of the policies are borderline sock them shit in general. Even though that one chatter literally said they're moving towards state communism.
Kind of political battle on the issue of immigration. As you know, this is one of my key issues as an immigrant journalist in the United States. To be seen. The thought, though, of a Claudia Sheinbaum, who frankly, Stanford educated, speaks perfect English, sitting down in any kind of meeting with a potential Donald Trump is, it messes with the brain. Although I don't think she will take things sitting down.
And it's very interesting. They were just...
To be fair, Morena has been pretty... I mean, they've been definitely pretty submissive to American foreign policy in terms of immigration. So that is definitely an argument you can make against AMLO and the party in general. So
major protests in Mexico City outside the Israeli embassy around Gaza, and AMLO, the president, and the Morena Party supporting Mexico joining South Africa in its genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. And Claudia Sheinbaum, the front runner following AMLO, is a Jewish woman.
Correct. This is extraordinary because the fact that she is a Jewish woman, but she doesn't really, she's a scientist, so she's not very religious, but she is a Jewish woman, and then her name is Sheinbaum. It's not a big issue, which is fascinating in and of itself. In some ways, you know, my colleagues at Mexico...
It is, that part is actually kind of wild when you think about it, because like America hasn't fucking done that. You know what I mean? And we have a much larger Jewish population than Mexico does. Mexico's like 94% Catholic or some shit. Like, that is kind of, that is cool when you think about it. Way to go, media, and typecast all Jews as Zionists. Wait, what? I don't think Democracy Now! Would never do that in a million years. And no, I haven't seen anything from her that is... I have not seen anything from her, from Claudia, that says that she is like pro-Israel even remotely. The only thing I've seen is that a bunch of fucking right-wing accounts that are like supposedly pro-Palestine talking about how she's a Jew. That's it. And how she must be Zionist, which is ironic. Ironic considering that like AMLO, as we discussed at great length yesterday, AMLO was definitely more ambiguous about Israel, despite his own party not being so ambiguous and being very critical on Israel. He himself personally was much more ambiguous, refused to call it a genocide, yada, yada, yada. And part of the reason for that is, I suspect, because of the contracts that AMLO has with Israel. Very importantly, that that sweet Pegasus surveillance technology that AMLO's government has used on top of the military contracts as well. Israel sells a lot of weapons to Latin American countries. Israel also sometimes sells its surveillance technology, Pegasus, to Latin American countries in leadership. So that definitely is part of the reason why I suspect AMLO is, not as overtly critical of Israel, despite the fact that it seems like Mexico in and of itself, the ones that do care about the Israel-Palestine situation are definitely not pro-Israel.
Mexican journalists in many ways are leading this conversation of how you cover politics and you don't play into authoritarian and propaganda games. For example, there might have been journalists who wanted to kind of fuel the fire of saying, but she's Jewish. It hasn't really been an issue. And what's more interesting is that Claudia Sheinbaum and Xochitl Gálvez, both of them wearing huipiles, which is the traditional indigenous Mexican, you know it because of the embroidery. This is the fact that both of them are like, we love indigenous women, we love our indigenous roots. Again, fascinating for Mexican politics, which again, to me, that would be the word that I use in terms of Mexican politics right now.
Like, as far as Claudia's opinions on Palestine goes, I would suspect that if she were to move to a less critical place in terms of Israel, it wouldn't be because she's Jewish or whatever the fuck. It would be because she is representing a continuation of AMLO's policies. Do you know what I mean? Figures non-Mexicans will fall for this photo op when this woman is the governor of Mexico City. A cop trained by Israeli forces in her party by spy software. Yeah, that part is true. For the record, yeah, as I've mentioned as well. So her continuation, her opinion on what do you call it? Her personal opinion, I don't know in terms of Palestine, but as far as like this shit goes, it's classic. And that is the reason why I suspect AMLO was also critical of Israel, but not as critical as other Latin American countries. It is pretty funny that the Abu Obeida Stan account, though, is personally saying this is simply a fucking photo op and discounting it across the board. Like, that's ridiculous. Figures non-Mexicans would fall for this photo op when this woman is governor of Mexico City, a cop trained by Israeli forces. Again, regular order of business, business as usual. And her party by spy software, Pegasus from Israel, which is true. But the notion that like this is just simply a political photo op is ridiculous, dude. Who the fuck is putting on a keffiyeh? What politician is like, this is not the kente cloth, okay? This is not Nancy Pelosi kente cloth. When you put the fucking keffiyeh on, it means it is far more significant than Nancy Pelosi putting on the fucking kente cloth, okay? No, Nancy Pelosi in 3 months? Fuck no. That's precisely the reason why the Democrats don't do it, as a matter of fact. That's ridiculous. That is actually, unironically, that is ridiculous, okay? Yeah, there's a reason why Democrats don't do that aesthetic, the aesthetic posturing of like being pro-Palestine. You know what the Democratic Party is doing right now? Inviting Benjamin Netanyahu to speak in front of Congress. When the last time he spoke in front of Congress, he came in defiance of Barack Obama. Invited by the Republicans. And they're doing it when he's in the midst of, one, obviously political corruption charges internally in Israel, and two, is being petitioned to have an arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court. Yeah, keffiyeh photo ops are only a thing in Turkey where the 90% Muslim majority exists. Okay, fair. That's true. Yeah, you will see a keffiyeh photo op from Muslim majority nations, but you won't see it in fucking Mexico. That's crazy. Yeah, and Obama still signed a $30 billion fucking security package for Israel because he's so cucked. Oh, yeah, I heard about this as well. She wrote something pro-Palestinian. Claudia Sheinbaum, expected to be elected first female and first Jewish president of Mexico today, wrote this in an editorial during Israel's previous war with Hamas in 2009, in which the death toll of civilians in Gaza was very high. Because of my Jewish origin, because of my love for Mexico, and because I feel like a citizen of the world, I share with millions the desire for justice, equality, fraternity, and peace, and therefore I can only see with horror the images of state bombings, she added at the time, adding, no reason justifies the murder of Palestinian civilians. Nothing can justify the murder of a child. Now, once again, like I said, her opinions might have moved more to the center on Israel as a consequence of AMLO's opinion and security contracts they have with Israel. okay? But it's not because of her Jewish origin or whatever the fuck people are trying to say. Do you get it? Do you understand? Mexico's principles on foreign policy are constitutionally recognized. It includes non-intervention in domestic affairs of other countries and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Even if she is Jewish, Mexico will keep a neutral stance on 99% of foreign conflicts. In any case,
fascinating. That is not the term that I would use when discussing U.S. politics at all.
And Maria, finally, in terms of the legacy of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, obviously he came into office with a lot of hopes of progressives around the
how much leverage does Mexico has on Israel? It's like every other country, dude. It's like fucking the same shit with Colombia. You know what I mean? It is yet another avenue of pressure. Anytime a foreign nation says that they are participating in some form of BDS, whether it's the B or the D or the S, every point of pressure helps. If you think entire nations coming out against Israel's genocide isn't significant, then why the fuck are you protesting in the streets in the United States of America? Obviously, at the end of the day, the only country with any sort of serious moving power would be the United States of America. Okay, that's it. It's not the ICC, it's not the ICJ, it's not the UN, it's the United States of America. The United States of America is the only country that can rein in Israel, which is why I'm so critical of Joe Biden. But having said that, all of these other countries making Israel out to be a pariah for its ethnic cleansing campaign upon the Palestinian population or the apartheid will unironically cause America to reconsider its unconditional support. Just like you going out in the fucking streets and protesting will make American politicians greatly withstand a political penalty potentially, or at least fear a political penalty potentially. Okay?
The hemisphere. He remains very popular, but of course he's under a lot of criticism for his handling or his mishandling of the femicides, of the killing of journalists, of his dealings with the United States in terms of immigration. Your sense of how he will be remembered and what were his accomplishments?
Well, it is a very divisive time in Mexican politics as well, so we can't walk away from that. I mean, my own family is deeply divided. This feels very much like U.S. politics. Families divided. We won't talk about politics over dinner or no political conversations because of how divisive it is. Look, AMLO, again, came from a street movement to end up in the presidential palace. You're right, all of the critiques that surround him, but there is a lot of support for the policies that he's done specifically in terms of progressive policy.